I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We are continuing the Gospels again, and we got a lot of preaching, a lot of miracles all happening in the area of Galilee because those in Jerusalem are seeking to kill Christ again. Now there has been some controversy with the Pharisees accusing Christ of casting out devils by the power of the devil. We have great discourse on a house divided and all that. In our last reading, we read a number of parables from Christ. We're now in this part where he is teaching a number of parables. And the video was a little long, so I decided to now do the Joseph Smith translation in a separate video, and that is what we are going to read now. A lot of this, especially in the beginning part, seems to be primarily grammatical updates. So in verse 24, which is changed to who. In verse 25, instead of but while men slept, it is but while he slept. In verse 26, we remove the word was. So instead of but when the blade was sprung up, it's just but when the blade sprung up. Again, in verse 27, we remove the word from. So from whence then hath it tears is simply whence then has it tears. In verse 28, we add the word and. An enemy hath done this, and the servant said, instead of just the servant said. In verse 30, it's a little interesting. We simply reverse it. So in the King James, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles, and burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. The correction, but gather ye together first the wheat into my barn, and the tares are bound in bundles to be burned. I mean, the meaning is basically the same, but the order is different. So we're going to bring the righteous, and it's like in the last days when God burns the world and destroys all the wicked, the righteous are gathered to Christ, and then the world is cleansed. So that makes a little more sense there. And now with that change, maybe what I said earlier about it focusing on the church might not be true. This might just be the world. That does give more of a sense of the entire world. So that's interesting. In verse 34, we simply pluralize the word multitude. And in verse 35, pluralize the word prophet. Now, the only quote we have in the Old Testament that I can find that makes mention of this prophecy of speaking in parables is Psalms. But this says that multiple prophets made this prophecy. So does Matthew here reference scriptures that we don't have? It's very interesting. But 38, we, for some reason, take out the word one at the end. So instead of children of the wicked one, it is children of the wicked. Interesting. Now, verse 43 also changes him to them. So, who hath ears to hear, let them hear, instead of him hear. But verses 39 to 42 all have somewhat significant corrections here. So I'm just going to read these four verses in the Joseph Smith translation. You can follow along. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, or the destruction of the wicked. The reapers are the angels, or the messengers sent of heaven. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of the world, or the destruction of the wicked. For in that day, before the Son of Man shall come, he shall send forth his angels, and messengers of heaven, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them out among the wicked. And there shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth, for the world shall be burned with fire. So now I can go back and say that I was right, to a certain extent. This is talking about the world. The wicked of the whole world is going to be burned and destroyed in the end. But when he talks about taking the wicked out from among his people, he's talking about, in the end, the angels are going to be sent, and they're going to take the wicked out of the church and place them with the wicked of the world, so that all the wicked are together and can be burned together. That's a very interesting, actually somewhat profound clarification. There will be a cleansing of the church before Christ returns. But we leave that here. Our next video will actually be in multiple Gospels, so more parables on the way, and I'll see you there.